Lovelies, welcome back to the channel. How are you all doing? In today's video, I'll be showing us how to draft and stitch this beautiful play suit. Let's sit back and enjoy this. Firstly, our paper needs to be unfold, that is unfold into two, one part and the other part. So now I'm going to give a space of 1.5. So from this point now, I'm going to measure my back neckline. So for this, I've just been making use of a random number. I'm using 4.5 for the neckline to minimize this paper. Then for the round sleeve also, I'll be using 4.5. Then the next thing to measure my waistline, the waistline 9. Then the next thing to measure my hip point, then the hip point, I'm just making use of a random number. Just use the normal basic measurement when you're trying to do this. So for this, I'll be using 13. Then the next, okay, let me use 14. So the next will just be the length which I'll be working with. That is 18. So now let's connect each point. This is the point for my for the round sleeve. Then this is the waistline. And here, then here, okay, let me use this middle point here for the hip line. So now, the same measurement, everything I'm trying to do here is just the normal basic measurement. So the next thing also to do, to take my back measurements, I'm using 4.5. Next, to connect the points. Is to measure the basic my neckline. Here I don't really have any measurement for the neckline, so let me just measure for the bust point. The bust point I'll be working with is I'm just taking a random number, please. So I'll be working with 6. Then I'm giving a sewing allowance of 1.5. 1, then half for seam joining. So that's about 1.5. For the waist, I'll be using 4. Then it's half for joining, then 1 for seam. Okay, let me just use 3 for my, I'll be using 3.5, then half for seam, then 1 for joining. Then for the hip points, I'll be making use of 6, then half for joining, then 1 for seam allowance. So this is my. So now let's connect each point. Then don't forget, I'll come down by half here for my shoulder slant. And meanwhile, I'm just using this random number here. I'm using a random number. So I'll be using 2 for the neckline, then 3 for wideness, just a random number. So let's make our shoulder slants with 1/2 inch. So from here, I'm going to connect my round sleeve measurement. This is our round sleeve point. So now let's connect. So just make it a bit curved. Then, so the length that we'll be working with, the total length we'll be working then to the length. Here I'm using the same measurements. You can as well measure the height of whatever you want to use for the hemline. So here I'll just draw the hemline down using the same point for the hemline. Initial space here is for the crochet line. The reason for this line here is to take the measurement for the crochet point. We just come from this point here, I'll come down by 1 inch. So I'll make a bit curve. I'll just make a kind of curve to this point. And then also come down by the same 1 inch. And go down. This is just to take the measurements for our neckline, the neckline I'll be working with. It's also just a random number too. So this is the neckline. Then remember, when you are trying to cut it on your material, try to give it ½ inch for sewing allowance for joining. So at this point here, you take a measurement of ½ inch down. So now ½ inch. That will serve as joining. ½ of an inch. So now the next thing to do is to cut this point and measure for the back neckline. To work for the back pieces also, we are going to place our pattern on fold or our fabric on fold, and the next thing to do is to place one of the front parts on it and trace it out. And I left about 2 inches space here because of the crochet, because at the back crochet needs to be a bit spacious because of the bolts. So here I left about 2 inches to do also to trace our front bodies on it. Let me say 1 1/2. I left the space about 1 1/2 also. But meanwhile, the main one I'll be using is just 1, then half will be for the joining. It's just like taking our basic trouser measurements. So this half I left here also is for joining. So it depends on the measurement you want to use for the neckline. This will also serve for zipper allowance in case you would love to have a zipper at the back. At the end, we'll be having four pieces, two for front and two at the back. So we join it with the 2 inches which I left initially. So here's the pieces. So the next thing we need to do is to sew with half of an inch through the crochet line. Then I'll take it back to the machine and show us the result of it. Each point, that is the front, sew by half of an inch, and also the back half of an inch. So before stitches, we need to tape it at the round sleeve by a bias, that is to sew the neckline with bias, or we can as well cut a facing. Before joining the front and the back piece, I have a pocket, this stylish pocket at the front part before joining. So then afterwards I attached the pocket. The next thing I did was to place my front and the back piece together, then sew by the sewing allowance which I gave initially. If I'm to put a pocket at this place, I'm going to give a space of this, then insert the pocket. But for this, I'm not putting the pocket, just illustration on how to craft it. So this is the result after sewing. Hope you loved today's video. Let me know what you think of today's video. I'll see you all in my next video. Dinners lovers, return subscribers, thanks for always staying tuned to this channel. Thanks for loving your girl. I appreciate you all. Bye for now.